Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It's been almost 24 years since 9/11, and despite saying we would never forget, apparently many have. At least in New York City, of all places, where an Islamist and a communist named Zohran Mamdani may very well be elected the next mayor. Have we forgotten the ideology that led to the attack and so many others since then? I think we really never learned the lessons of the attack because of idiots like George Bush and others that assured us that Islam had been hijacked by an organization called Al-Qaeda that perverted a peaceful religion for its own purposes. He then proceeded to declare a war on terror. How's that working out across the world? But Islamists are not limited to terror attacks. They use politics as well. Political Islam is alive and thriving in the U.S., and we better wake up before it's too late. Think it couldn't happen in far-left Nashville, which has already elected Muslims? Our guest tonight is Cathy Hinners, author of Muslim Brotherhood, The Threat in Our Backyard, and creator of the blog DailyRollCall.com. She keeps a close eye on what the Islamists are doing here in Tennessee, and she has identified someone who is already an elected official in Nashville that might possibly be a Tennessee version of Mamdani. Cathy will join us in just a minute, but first, a Trump update. One of the things in the big, beautiful bill, as Trump likes to call it, was a savings account for every newborn. And, you know, that sounds nice to a lot of people, although I don't know where you could ever find that in our Constitution. I don't think it's a good idea for our federal government to be setting up savings accounts for each child born. Granted, we waste money on things that are a lot worse than that, no doubt. But I still think it's overall a bad deal, especially when you consider that same bill, we're going to increase the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. So I know that there'll be a lot of parents that be happy to get that. Maybe it will spur them to save more and more money. But this is just another case of good intentions in government for things that a lot of people might like, but we really, really should not be doing. Now, let's talk a little bit about Israel and Hamas and what is going on over there. Going back to the opening comments about, I think, what we have forgotten, apparently people have also forgotten what Hamas is and the threat that Hamas is. And, you know, there's so many people out there that have this mindset that everything's a Jewish conspiracy. You know, everything. And they think that somehow we can trust what Hamas tells us. If Hamas says it's a genocide, well, it must be a genocide. If the UN says it's a genocide, well, it must be a genocide. Neither one of those. I mean, UN, I've always considered UN to be short for useless nations, because that's generally speaking what they consist of. So, you know, if you're one of those people out there that just thinks everything is a Jewish conspiracy, and look, I'm not saying they're a perfect country. Our country's not perfect. Do I completely trust their government? No, I don't completely trust our government either. But none of that makes Hamas our friend. None of that makes Hamas a good organization. So we just need to keep that in mind. Now, in response, you know, to some of the other countries who are now suggesting the two-state solution, which I think we kind of saw what the two-state solution would be on October 7th in 2023. Canada is saying that they're going to recognize a Palestinian state. I think Germany and France and others have suggested that, and then others in the UN. And to Trump's credit, he said that if Canada did that, that there would be no trade deal. So I think he's right on that. We have lost our collective minds in this country when it comes to organizations like Hamas. That doesn't make Israel perfect, but I'm going to tell you, they are They are, let me put it this way. Does anybody lose sleep at night? Does anybody worry at night about Jews sneaking over the border and killing us? No, but I guarantee you've thought about, Islamists might sneak. Oh, wait a minute. Islamists are probably already here because the border was open for all these years. And that's if you have any sense, that's who you're worried about. So I think this kind of dovetails with what we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So fortunately, Trump is kind of taking a good stand, a hard stand on that, and kudos for that. Let's welcome our guest, Cathy Hinners. Cathy, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Trying to keep busy, and a lot of this stuff is doing just that. And, getting back in the groove, figuring out who's who, and that's why I'm glad to be back on. We got a lot to talk about.
Well, good. Well, we're going to get right to us. So tell us who this potential Mamdani is and why you think that person might be encouraged to run for mayor.
Well, her name is Zulfat Swara. She's a Nigerian who currently is a council member at large for the Nashville Metro Council. And so I just feel that she's being groomed to do the next step. She likes politics. She's very active with different people up in Washington, D.C., and so she has the base of voters. And so I think that would probably be the natural progression for her. And so just so people, if they don't know who she is, she's involved with the American Muslim Advisory Council, which has been around since 2012. When they were doing the anti-Sharia bill, they formed AMAC to go against that. Well, there was others as well, but this was the main one. So, and that was back in 2012. She's been the chair of AMAC from 2012 to about 2019. And in 2021, she became their treasurer. She still has her hand in that. The American Muslim Advisory Council, which we've talked about in great detail, has its arm around a lot of Muslim Brotherhood organizations. So she fits into that perfectly. In 2018, the Islamic Society of North America, which is a Muslim Brotherhood group, recognized her as the Muslim Advocate of the Year. So, she's interesting because her hands are all over Muslim Brotherhood organizations. But also during her time as the chair of AMAC, they've accepted grants from the George Soros Proteus Fund, which I don't think anybody would be surprised at, because the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, who is very close to AMAC, also has received, I think, a couple more grants than AMAC. And it wasn't a large sum of money, but, there again, you're taken from George Soros.
Right.
So she's the council member at large right now and is very well liked. And I'm not sure why. She's very charismatic. She claims to like the same things, American values and things, but she really doesn't. Right. But the problem right now, Dave, is that we have more Muslims throwing their names in the political ring. And so we wanted to start educating people on who these potential candidates are, because we've got a lot of midterms coming up. We've got a lot of things in my county. Just about every seat's going to be available in my county. So since she's the only elected Muslim in Tennessee, we thought we would start with her. We have no idea that she's going to run. I'm not trying to say she's, put her name in to run. We don't know that yet, but it would be a natural progression for her to try to be the mayor of Nashville.
Is she the only elected one in Tennessee? I thought we had some at the state level. I thought we had one from Memphis, I thought.
I don't remember if that person made it or not. I don't know. I want to say she is the only Muslim. Several have run. We had another one run. She was, I believe, from Gallatin a couple of years ago, right. And she didn't make it either. And then there's Zach Moyhuden, who we can talk about later. He's in my Coffee County, and he's run 2 or 3 occasions for commission and school board here in my county, and he hasn't made it.
Right. But now let me just say something here. She's at one of the at-large positions in the city council of Nashville, and if I'm not mistaken, she won by the highest percentage of any of
Yes.
the at-large candidates.
Yes, she did. And so we know that her base is large, but we know that she's very well liked. She tends to hit the right notes at the right time with the right people. But the disturbing trend now with the Muslim candidates, they have no problem talking about their socialist, communist ideas like, Mamdani. So I just wanted to show some of the things, how they kind of closely resemble each other. We also have to remember she was co-chair for Bernie Sanders' campaign here in Tennessee,
Right.
and Bernie Sanders is a full-blown socialist.
Yep. Yep.
She was the co-chair of his campaign here. So to start with, we know that Mamdani wants to make the New York City bus station free, fast, and more reliable. Zulfat also wants to reform the WeGo bus system in the city of Nashville. I have her quoting, it says, "The issue with bus rides over the years is the lack of frequency and reliability. While there has been improvement, WeGo must continue to increase their frequency and reliability where riders can plan according to a reliable schedule. It's also important for WeGo to extend bus hours so that they can work early or late." So, that's an interesting thing because they're not thinking about who's going to pay for that.
Right. Oh, they know, they've thought about it. They don't
Yeah,
care.
you're right. They have thought about it, but it's like, we go back to that socialist idea where everything's going to be free.
Yeah.
And certainly they want faster and more reliable, which I get. I think, a bus system should be that. But I don't know that the bus systems can build around people's schedules.
Right.
I think people have to build around the bus schedule. And
Yeah.
so, that idea with them is like, ridiculous. So Mamdani wants to abolish the police, and we know now he's kind of backing off saying that.
Right.
He's a disgrace. He showed up at the officer's funeral today, and was received well by the family, but he was not received well by the thousands of police officers that were there. They did not turn their back on him like they did with de Blasio, but they disrespected him in other ways. Zulfat doesn't use the word abolish, but rather, quote, find new alternatives. So the Nashville Banner asked a bunch of questions back in 2023. And so I picked the ones that have also been answered by Mamdani. So the next one was, does Metro need more police officers beyond the unfilled positions? Well, we all know Nashville is running short of police officers, as is New York City. New York City is about 10,000 less.
Wow.
I believe the last time I talked to James Smallwood from Metro Police, it was maybe 100.
That's still a lot.
So that's a lot,
Yeah.
But her answer was, quote, no, we need to invest in non-policing alternatives that are preventative and non-punitive in nature. Use of mental health professionals on calls, as well as community programs on education. Being a retired cop, I worked with a lot of social workers. We had to call them in on, calls all the time. And the interesting thing is, they didn't want to go into the call until, we secured the scene that we were on. Because
Right.
when we had to, call for them, there was a mental health issue. And so, I thought about that after the 4 people got shot and killed on Park Avenue the other day, on Monday. And I thought, you know what? There are no alternatives to law enforcement. I'm sorry.
Nope.
To keep law and order, you have to have that. But she jumped on that bandwagon from, a couple of years ago until currently, she's still on it, that they need policing alternatives.
Does Nashville still have an oversight committee, or did we
Yes,
get
they
rid of
do.
it? Is she on that, or do you know?
No, she is not.
Okay.
She was not anyway. But yeah, they're still pretty active. And I call them the overreach committee because, they wanted the ability to issue summonses for police officers to go before them and testify about things. I'm like, no.
Right.
We've got internal affairs and, other
We have
other
courts.
agencies that, yeah, we do. We have a system, and
Yeah.
sometimes, the system needs tweaking. But overall, we have a system in place, and we have to have law enforcement. So I'm always kind of amused when they think we can get rid of it. And Mamdani or yeah, Nandami there, he's, backing off. I mean, he's been hardcore, get rid of the police. And so I guess yesterday he changed his mind and said that, this guy was a hero and the city police were heroes. And people need to keep that in mind, though, that in a city as dense and as highly populated with all types of people, you better keep your law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I can't imagine what that would look off. You're talking, there's right now, I think there's 36,000 police officers in the city of New York. And, how do you do that? How do you just get rid of it? But whatever. So then the next thing she wants to do, or Nandami wants to do, is triple the city's production of permanently affordable, union-built, rent-established homes, constructing about 200,000 new units over the next 10 years. Boy, does that sound great. She says the council's role is to increase funding and create a policy that helps the creation and retention of affordable housing. So, and then she goes on to say that she sponsored 3 different bills, one that would direct 50% of the future of Oracle property taxes, Oracle's a developer,
right,
subject to council approval, of course, to Barnes funds. Well, the Barnes Fund are grants for the preservation and creation of affordable housing, or affordable housing. So, there again, they're kind of running neck and neck on 3 out of these things so far, because they have the same mindset about everything. So basically they believe, that free government, everything is free, is that the answer to our problems in this country? You and I know, and I think that it's important that people start understanding that behind this is this hidden agenda, which is disguised as Islam, basically, because under Islamic control, and that's what it would end up being,
right.
There's no personalization, there's no exceptionalism. It's all about equity. And that's they might as well be running on equity. Equity is different, than equality. And I think equity is a lot scarier than equality, because it takes what you have. If you have too much, they take it to give to someone who doesn't.
Right.
And, our obvious culture is that we work hard for what we get and we move up in the world and make more money and buy nicer things. Whereas they just want what you have, so.
Yeah. And communism and Islam, they are a good fit, unfortunately. I mean,
they really are.
It's all about total control. That's why they mesh so well. That's why you have what's called the Red-Green Alliance, and we'll get into that here in a few.
Well, and I think that's what's so scary too, is that people that are comfortable with who they vote for, it isn't about doing research and maybe seeing something that you don't like about someone. It's the easy way out. It's just, vote for somebody that the name, and they've been in business, they've been in the political arena for years. And so it's just easier to vote for them. So the other problem with Zulfat is that she's embraced the anti-Semite ideology. The picture you're seeing now is from the Tennessee Performing Arts Center.
Oh my gosh.
I think they honored 4 or 5 women one afternoon for their accomplishments in the city of Nashville. And for some reason, Ms. Zulfat thinks she's Queen Zulfat. This is not Photoshop.
I was just getting ready to say.
No, it's not Photoshop. So I think that's, she's Queen Zulfat. She does claim to be Nigerian royalty. She claims to come from the family of, Nigerian royalty. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But she does like to embrace the Islamists, the anti-Semites, the Jew haters, America haters, basically.
Kevin, can we put those pictures back up that we had at the beginning? We had a picture of her with Linda Sarsour,
Ilhan Omar.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep. Ilhan Omar. And then we know she's also good friends with Rashida Tlaib, another total America Jew hater. I mean, there is nothing about our country that she appreciates at all.
Yep.
And then there's her and Linda Sarsour. Linda Sarsour is a Palestinian supporter. She believes in the BDS movement. I mean, anything that's bad, she's been involved with. Yep. Going back to Michael Brown in Ferguson, when those riots were happening, he brought the Muslims, I think it was called the Muslims for Michael Brown, She had a big contingency there, and they caused a lot of problems. She's not opposed to being arrested. She's been arrested several times. So these are the people that Zulfat likes to associate with. And these aren't one-time pictures. These are pictures that are just the last ones that we picked. When she goes to Washington, she seeks them out and she meets with them. And so, that in it of itself, I think, is problematic. She's even done social media posts where she says that she is inspired by them. So if you're inspired by, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
And then we also know that in the first term that she won, she was sworn in on the Quran, which I do not believe we should be allowing at all.
I don't either. Absolutely.
It's so antithetical. There's the picture of her being sworn in on that they're not legitimate, really, but they're making laws and changing everything like they're supposed to. But she also is inspired by, and I think most people recognize the name Justin Jones. He's a state representative.
The worst of the worst in Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. And he just had Ilhan Omar and him did a town hall in Antioch a couple weeks ago. And it was pretty well attended, which I was kind of surprised at. But, they all are pushing the same ideology. But I think if people don't understand why we're honing in on certain people, their goal overall is to conquer America, which they know would be impossible basically in a war. So they vowed to come from within.
Right.
And every time they're elected, it gives them that leverage to do exactly what they said is coming from within and effecting change. And that's how, we're starting to see more and more pockets of little bits of Sharia here or halal products or banking. Yep. And so this is how they're doing it. It's very, it's baby steps and it's very methodical, but we're seeing an uptick in this now. It's not as slow as it used to be. They're coming forward, more and more. So I would ask people in any county that they're listening to, start paying attention. And it isn't about hate. It's not about bigotry. It's not about whatever, Islamophobia or whatever. It's start paying attention to your Muslim population within your own county and pay attention to commission meetings and planning meetings. And start watching to see if mosques or Islamic centers are going to be built in your county.
Right.
Because, when we look at what's happening over in the UK, and we are not far behind that, and they're done. I mean, they got cops now arresting Christian preachers who are out doing their thing on the street, and then a Muslim will walk by and say, "You're harassing me," and they arrest them. So, we may say, well, we have a constitution. The Constitution is a piece of paper. Yeah. It's our founding document, but it's
got to be enforced. It's just everything is just a piece of paper if you're not going to enforce it. Bottom line.
And we don't, So the other thing, along with watching your counties for that, is to watch your county's Democratic parties. We're having an issue here in this county. The head of our Democratic Party is a school teacher who is a socialist. He belongs to the Democratic Party of Socialists. Very into the LGBTQ crap.
There are more blue dog Democrats. The Democrats in Tennessee, Nashville, anywhere in Tennessee are just as far left as the Democrats in New York City, just as far left as the Democrats in San Francisco. Pick a place. They're just as far left. And they are, at this point in time in this country, if you're still a Democrat, you're uninformed, you're misinformed, or you're a communist. One of those three.
That's right. Yeah. And that's really, I find it very frightening and disturbing that this could be a trend where we're headed. But people have to know that more and more Muslims are running for office, are being elected. Take a look at Minnesota. We've got a Somalian of all people. We know Somalians hate Americans. Yeah. And here this guy is probably going to, win his mayoral.
Yeah. In Milwaukee. That's in Milwaukee. And in Minnesota, In Minnesota, they play the call to prayer over intercoms in Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And that's why, when I tell, people to start paying attention in your own county, the call to prayer is 5 times a day. And so if you're up to hearing that, you can hear it depending on the size of the speaker. You can hear that for a mile or more. And so, we're not ready for that. I don't believe we're ready as a society for that. People have to get off the notion that Islam is strictly a religion. It's a very small part of religion. Right. It's a political way of life. Yep. And so until people get that, but I do see a trend. I do see people wanting to know more about it and also understanding it more. And so I think this is the perfect time to continue to educate them. And, when I talked about our county, I'm in Coffee County. And so the Democratic committee is having some sort of event next Saturday. And they're bringing in one of the Muslims from the Murfreesboro Mosque. His name is Abdul Kati, and he's with the Murfreesboro Muslim Youth. So there you go with that, collaboration between them again. And that seems to be the new trend everywhere. The Democrats are forming these alliances with Islamists.
Yeah, the Red-Green Alliance. It's been around for years, but a lot of people, it's just, I don't know why they don't get that. It's there.
Yeah, people are interested in that, they're focusing. Well, I think most people are so overwhelmed with things, especially if you got kids in school. And so, they pick the wrong things to attach themselves to. And I've told people, pick something, that's happening in your own community, whether it's a county community or whatever, and focus on that. Expose those that are involved in that. We have Indivisible. Indivisible is not a good organization to be attached to. And there's more and more indivisible chapters opening up in more and more counties here in Tennessee. And the kind of the funny part is when they first started, it was all old people, it was like senior citizen, meetings. But they have the ability to do some damage to, to candidates that are running or to the political realm in your own county. So, these are things, and that's the other thing too. SEIU has always backed Zulfat. I believe I had a picture of that, and I'm sorry I forgot that. But SEIU, that union, is also backing, Mamdani. So SEIU is not a good thing. Either is the Tennessee Teachers Association. Not a good thing.
Yeah. All the teachers unions are commie. They are.
Yeah.
If it's an actual teachers union that stems from the National Education Association, they're commie.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
And so I think, more people that are involved in schools need to look at that, start paying attention to what your school boards are doing. Because, when they hold these meetings, like at 4:00 in the afternoon, most people don't get out of work till 4 or 5 or after.
Yeah.
The meetings are already over and the decisions have already been made. Right. And parents aren't part of that. And the one problem that we have here with the head of the Democratic Party, he's a teacher at our Coffee County High School. And somebody had told me, and I have not found that out, but somebody told me, a good resource, that he does fly the LGBT pride flag in his classroom. I know that we had a law that passed through our House that was trying to ban everything but the American flag. Right. And then the Senate crushed it. Yeah. So unfortunately, and I don't know why they would crush that. The American
got people like Randy McNally in charge of the Senate. That's not all that surprising.
And so that's, but those are the things people need to pay attention to. If you don't mind your kid going to school with a rainbow flag, then that's your prerogative. But I think most people don't want to know the teacher's sexual preferences. Right. Teach me. Don't, I didn't know any of my teachers' personal things. I didn't know what they were politically or anything else. And that change in our structure of schools is very dangerous. And so I think people better pay attention to all of that, So we've been talking about the Red-Green Access
Alliance.
the leftists, I guess what I find amazing is the leftists and the Islamists obviously are banding together in more ways than one, but they both oppose basically the same thing, Western values. They absolutely hate that. But like you say, they're basically communists. And I think people shake their head, when we start talking about that, because people don't want to believe that. Right. But what we're seeing, it's interesting, is that through these alliances, you have the LGBTQ or whatever it is movement, and Islamists won't publicly condemn it. They won't really embrace it, but we know that Muslims are very opposed to homosexuality. And so we also know, and especially in Iran, but in a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, they throw gays off of roofs, and right. I got the biggest kick out of when they had some pride parade, or it was a rally for something, and the guy had gays for Hamas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does that work out for you, Yeah.
But now the Muslims, even though they're most of them, do oppose that, they're willing to work with them now against Western civilization, against us, against our government, against, basically Christian civilization, Judeo-Christian civilization. They'll work together against that.
And what's really crazy is the deception that's in play. I mean, we know the word taqiyya, right, which is the art of deception for Muslims, and they're very good at that. So, while they don't actually embrace that, that movement, they don't condemn it, because right. then they would be ostracized just like anybody who speaks out against it, But I think that's kind of interesting. I just wanted to go back real quick about Mamdani. I found something interesting, and I don't know that he is, but I read an article that says that he is a Shia Muslim. Shia Muslims identify as Twelvers, and I think that's very interesting, especially with what's been happening over in Iran. Their belief is that the 12 imams are descendants of Muhammad, and that the 12th imam is currently alive and he lives in a cave somewhere in the Middle East. But what's interesting is the relationship of Twelvers within the Iranian government. We know that those involved in the present day nuclear problem that Iran has, they believe that the Mahdi's return must be brought on by global destruction. And what other way do you do that? Obviously, is by nuclear, demise. So I just thought that was interesting. I haven't seen where he's publicly said he was a Shia Muslim. He's from Uganda, so anything is possible. But there is a whole contingency of them that are Twelvers. And so I think I thought that was kind of interesting that he may be one with those views, which I think is kind of hysterical. But so just, I'm going to have to look more into that, but there was an article about that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So that's that on Mamdani. I won't talk about him anymore.
Right. And I think we already talked about, they do have some of the same funding sources. Both of them have been funded by Soros and other type groups. Obviously there's going to be Muslim Brotherhood funding, although, Muslim Brotherhood is it's not a corporation. CARE would be the closest thing to a Muslim Brotherhood corporation. And I'm sure they're going to really get support from both of them. That's the other thing too. We talked about Hamas earlier. Well, back in early 2000s, between I think 2007, 2008, you had the Holy Land Foundation trial, which was the biggest terror financing trial in history. And at that time, the FBI recognized, they said that CARE is Hamas. Now, Hamas used to be a recognized terrorist organization in our country. As far as I know, they still are, but I don't understand why we're allowing them, for all these different groups associating with Hamas or claiming Hamas. I don't know why they're allowed to be walking around. I mean, hey, you know what? If you're over here and you're pushing Hamas and you're not a citizen, you should be instantly deported. Absolutely instantly. Now, I did hear that Trump, I think, is reducing the number, or has put a ban on, people from certain Muslim countries, I think it ought to just be a total ban. I mean, if you're,
Yeah, I do too.
If you're Muslim, don't come here. We don't need you.
Yeah. No, and I think that it's something that he really needs to kind of expand. I think he tried that in his first term,
Right.
and that didn't go over well at all. But he's got a better grip on things, and I think while he still doesn't get the whole concept of Islam, and I think still a lot of his people within his cabinet don't
Right.
get the whole bottom line. But I think they are better. I think he has surrounded himself with more people that do understand it. But we're still, like you say, and Hamas still is that on the foreign terrorist organization list. They've been there for a while. And, now they're blatantly flying the flags of Hamas and Palestine, which there is no such thing as Palestine, but whatever.
Right.
But, we've let them not just exist, we've led them to flourish. CARE has over 600 chapters now throughout the United States. And, the head of CARE, Nihad Awad, is a self-proclaimed supporter of Hamas. We have him on video from years ago, saying that he was a supporter of Hamas. Well, he should have been locked up right then. But we seem to let these organizations thrive. And when you look at the Muslim Brotherhood manifesto, we call it, it's the memorandum.
Right.
When we look at that, they list all their organizations in the back of this manifesto.
Yep.
And there are several that are doing extremely well. And the very first one is the Islamic Center of North America, who Zulfat Sawara received an award from.
Right.
So they're not hiding these things anymore. They're out in the open, and they're proud of it. And they have these huge conferences, usually in Chicago, or they're usually there's a couple coming up. The Islamic Society of North America, the Islamic Circle of North America, ICNA. They all have these huge political rallies and conferences, and they attract thousands and thousands of Muslims.
Right.
And in those, when you hear the different speeches, we had a woman back when the Black Lives Matter movement was going strong. Her quote was something to the effect of, if we can have a revolution across, the Middle East, why can't we have that revolution here in America? And
Wow.
so, that's really very telling. We have ballots.
Yeah, and let's remind everybody, he lived in Memphis for years. He's now down in Texas, in that big community down in Texas, an Islamic community that's what he's heading up, and I think that's happening in other places as well.
Yeah. Well, and he is trying it on a smaller scale in Memphis, but that was one of the reasons why I came out, with asking people to start paying attention in their counties, because I think Tennessee is ripe for those type developments, as far as the way that they're accepted here, and have the whole, living homes, and then, surrounded by a mosque or Islamic center. They'd have the madrasa for the kids,
Right.
But when you look, we have that as Americans, we have those type developments. So I'm not surprised if they wouldn't try it in here, because Yasser Qadi is from Tennessee, and he has close relationships to those in Nashville. So why wouldn't he want to build something like that here or try it? It is, facing a lot of resentment and a lot of backlash down in Texas, and they had stopped it for a little bit, but the mosque was still there. And what people don't understand is that mosques and Islamic centers back in Muhammad's day were places for military operations.
Yeah, they're military headquarters. I mean, they're the headquarters of everything. And, and as you said, it's not just a religion. We don't care if they want to pray to him 5 times a day. We just don't want to hear it. We don't want our roads blocked. We don't want everything shut down. Okay, who they pray to, we don't care about. And it's just like I think we'll have a slide here in a little bit. So much of their doctrine is not about how they should live, but about how people who are not Muslim have to adopt to them, have to cater to them, and what they intend to force on us. In that explanatory memorandum that you mentioned by the Muslim Brotherhood, it lays out their plan. It says in black and white what they want to do, that they're not here to be just another religion, and that they will use our systems against us. They'll use our own, what was it they call, our own wretched hand or something like that, to destroy us from within. And we have all these idiot governors, mayors, legislators who think, oh, it's just a different religion. They got a First Amendment. Yeah, okay, they got a First Amendment right to believe what they want to believe. But if you read their doctrine, you'll see it's incompatible with our Constitution. It's incompatible with civilization. Why does everybody think that the Middle East is a hellhole? It's because of Islam and tribalism.
Yeah, that's right. And, there's so many problems in different cities or countries right now. And this is the other thing, about Zulfat. She's Nigerian, and Christians are being slaughtered in her country. And I read today, I think it was in the Congo, where ISIS went into a church. They've killed over 40 people so far. Yep. So what they do is they torture them in the churches, then they lock them in these buildings, and then they set them on fire. Yep. And so, there's never any talk about that. It's always, if a Muslim gets a stubbed toe, it's like somebody else's fault, and you're Islamophobe. But yet we have Christians all over the world still being slaughtered by Muslims, and there's no outcry at all. There's nothing to say we're sorry, nothing. Right. But it is a very dangerous, and I think the most comical thing is, they pray to Allah 5 times a day, and he's dead. If you're a Christian, you at least know your God is living. My God's alive. Right. And, there's that hope that he does things. But what do you do when you kind of pray to a dead God? What do you expect from that? So maybe that's half their problem. I'm not sure. But and then of course their prophet was a pedophile. He married a 6-year-old.
That's it. If you told anybody else that religion X was founded by a murdering, raping pedophile, they would say, well, I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
But that's what Islam was founded by. So what good can come from that? That just doesn't make any sense to me why he has any supporters. With the money and the connections and how well she is liked in Nashville, and the fact that she won her position pretty handily, as far as an at-large seat. Do you really think that she's got and we're not saying, she has not announced, okay. But keep another thing in mind. In the mayor's race, there's a lot of times, there's several different people running, so you don't necessarily have to win a huge percentage. But right. You think she could possibly pull it off?
I believe she could. I think her support is pretty wide. I think it goes outside of, the city of Nashville. And, she's got Justin Jones and, the other one there, Justin Pearson and Gloria Johnson. She has all the wackos. Right. But they're all socialists, but she has the support of those. And so, I think she would stand a good chance of being elected. I do want, I was looking at my own website, and I found an article that I had written back when she was running. I think it was the second time. And what really disturbed me was that in 8 different photos, she was holding the American flag upside down. And so I thought that was to me, that's a sign of disrespect. Yeah. But, it wasn't a real big one. It was probably like an 8x10 size flag. And
still, who holds it upside down all the time?
Every single time. It was on a stick, but then it's pictures of her with, supporters, and they're holding their flag up, and there she is, disrespecting the American flag. So, people need to look a little bit further into, what she really says. They're very deceitful people. They depend on deception actually to win over people. They've got their dawah, which is the proselytizing of Islam, and that makes them such good religious, pious people.
Right.
But if you start paying attention to their friends and their associates, and I would say right off the bat, her being inspired by two of the worst
Right.
in our country is really disturbing. And so I just hope that people would, because we're not done, after this show, there'll be articles that will start coming out. And certainly when she does decide to, if she does decide to put her name in, we will be all over that,
Right.
hopefully educating people.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see.
Well, whether it's her or whether it's another Islamist, people need to remember that in Nashville, which we know it's far left, you don't have a lot of Republicans there. The left and the Islamists are going to work together. So, maybe it's not her, but it could be any of them that, have a good following. They're going to have the support. The Red Green Alliance will be working together, full force to try to take over Nashville. Now, I think we mentioned this a minute ago, but what can you tell us about Jetpack?
Jetpack is a new, kind of a new trend that's coming out that we're just starting to see, but it actually means Justice, Education, Technology, Political Advocacy Center. They're building a strong political infrastructure to increase the community's influence and engagement. That's what their mission is. They do say that they will take their quote is, "We will take our place at the table across all levels of government." And they are doing exactly that. They're on the lowest forms of government in counties. They're judges. I mean, they're working their way up, into the larger political scales. They were founded back in 2015 by a guy named Nadim Mazan from Cambridge City over in Massachusetts. And he won so I almost said bigly. Isn't that a Trump word? Oh my God. He won so big that they based this whole format on his success. And basically what it is, it's to reach voters. It's showing our youth, or not our youth. They're looking to, they have a youth program and a public service fellowship, which I thought was a weird term for them to use. But anyway, they're looking to teach young people how to reach voters, how to build, local movements, how to leverage the right resources, and then even how to overcome Islamophobic attacks. So this is what they're training, but they're training their young people politically, how to run a political system. We aren't doing it. Our young people, if you asked a Gen Zer, certain questions about the political environment, you're not going to get a good answer.
No.
They are inspiring their young people to engage in the civic process. And they say about, if you want to affect change, then you have to become a politician. And so, they have this whole movement, and it's a very well-funded movement. Now, I am trying to find a connection between Soros has so many funds, the Open Society Foundation, the Proteus Fund. It's hard to find, but I have been looking up that. The Soros Foundation did fund the Workers' Family Party, which
with
Mamdani was part of.
And the Tides Foundation as well.
Yes, yeah. And I can't find that connection with Zulfat. But as we get closer, they'll have their PACs and stuff, and then we'll be able to figure out that. But I think what's interesting about them training young people for leadership down the road, that's what this guy from Murfreesboro is coming to meet with the Coffee County Democratic Party in a couple of weeks. So, people need to put two and two together. He's from the Muslim Youth Association in Murfreesboro, and he's coming to talk to the Democratic Party here in this county. And I'm sure it's not the only county they've done this event in. So, and I'm sure he'll bring friends from, the mosques and certainly the Islamic Center in Nashville. But, we have a guy that's here. His name is Zach Moyhuden. He's, like I said, he's run for office and he's failed miserably. But you can tell he's trying to be active. He's getting his name out there. This is what's disturbing. He's an engineer with the base here in Tullahoma.
The Air Force Base.
Yes, the Air Force Base. I believe he has a rather high clearance. So that I find to be very disturbing.
Yeah.
He was one of the main speakers back in 2013 when there was that conference that had Bill Killian, the U.S. District Attorney.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that one. Yeah.
And Ken Moore, the FBI agent that was supposedly only meeting with Muslims. And I was so proud because so many hundreds of people.
I remember that.
It was packed, and it was great. And he was the first speaker, and he talked about change. And I thought that was kind of interesting because that's obviously what they're doing to look to effect change. But Jetpack is quite a large establishment. They're fairly new, 10 years old, but they really are growing, and they're doing well as far as training. The trainings that they have are filled. Anybody can register for them online. I've thought about it, but I know they won't let me in. But it's interesting because they're now showing people how to do, what's right for their political progression. Right. And I think that's scary because there again, back to the manifesto, they will come from within.
Yeah.
And what better way to do it than be a politician who has the means to affect change.
Yeah, and think about it, like Minnesota, Milwaukee, they got a Somali running for mayor. Minnesota, I think it's Minneapolis, they play the call to prayer. Since 9/11, the population of Muslims has increased, the number of mosques, the number of elected officials, number running for, it's all increased. Yeah. It's only gotten worse, and after all this time and after all that time in Iraq and Afghanistan, nobody in our government seems to recognize the threat. And, I don't think our local law enforcement or law enforcement at any level really has a clue. I mean, think about it. At the first of the year, we had the attack in New Orleans. Haven't heard anything else about it. Heard anything else about it. In Dover, we have a compound that's known as Muslims of America in Stewart County, and actually known as Jamaat al-Fukr, or they're linked to Jamaat. Now, in the early 2000s, the FBI was watching that compound, supposedly. That was one of 35 across the country. Yeah. And I don't know how many there are now. But you don't hear about these things anymore. And they just seem to be growing. And, I have zero confidence that our government has a clue, especially at the state level. The state level has been pathetic.
The state
about
level
this.
Here.
They're just pathetic. But that's another concern is our population, the native population of our country. We're not even having enough children for replacement. Okay, we're not even producing enough kids to replace the current generation. I don't know. I meant to look this up earlier, but generally speaking, Muslims have large families. Yeah. Okay. And so, are they going to take over America in 10 years? No. But you know what? We've already lost Dearborn. We've got them in, they've already got footholds in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And so it's scary. And it's scary because people are so stupid about it. And I don't know what it takes for people to wake up to this threat. I really don't know.
Well, they didn't really wake up with 9/11. There was always those people that, felt Muslims were the victim, which we know they're excellent at being victims. Right. And so they still go back to that. And they talk about how Islamophobia has increased 600%, since 9/11. Well, no, it hasn't. If anybody's got a victim problem right now, it's the Jewish people in this country. Where they're being kicked off college campuses and beat and everything else. So,
well, Christians are discriminated against as well anymore. Both.
And it's really, we'll see that here. Probably fairly soon, within a few years, I'm sure. It's happening. I think people just need to look at the UK and see where they're at. But the Muslim call to prayer and they block the streets. Actually, it's kind of strange. I watched a lot of the funeral today of that officer that was killed in New York City. Obviously, he was a Muslim. There was no American flag draped on the coffin. It was a flag of Islam, green and white.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
his wife and the other females were in full burqas. I mean, they were in faces covered, the whole 9 yards. And they prayed. They shut down the Bronx, and there were thousands of them praying in the streets. And even though they were attending a funeral, they were there to that's their propaganda.
Yep.
That's to show that this is who we are.
Right.
They still do have the Muslim Day Parade every year in September in New York City, in Manhattan. And so, I was torn because obviously he was a fellow officer, and I certainly feel bad that he was gunned down and killed. But everything, there was no sign of him being an American whatsoever. And I was really annoyed when I didn't see the American flag.
Wow.
I thought that was a little
That
telling.
says a lot. That says a lot.
Yeah, like where he's from Bangladesh, and where are his loyalties?
Right.
But when I saw the wife in full burqa, I was like, oh wow, they're not Americanizing, they're not Westernizing, no. They're not picking up how we live. They're bringing their stuff here. So why did you even bother leaving there?
Right.
I don't.
Right. Well, and I don't know why we leave. We used to limit our immigration. We used to limit it to Christian countries, and if you were not from a compatible Western country, Western civilization country, if you were not compatible, then Edward Kennedy and LBJ, and they've just opened the floodgates, and we've let all the garbage in.
Yeah.
So,
and we don't have anybody. I mean, we look to Trump to do everything.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that background, or you don't have somebody that's going to tell you or show you the actual way of Islam, then you're not going to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And that's allowing them to just continue to grow and to flourish, and that's very problematic. I think more and more people will see that. I think people are still rolling their eyes when we start talking about Islam. They're like, oh, there they go again.
Right.
But if they would just listen and research, I mean, we didn't make this stuff up.
Read their own words. Read their own words.
Yeah. And that's why we can't, CARE has tried to come after me before when I was a law enforcement instructor. But when you use their own pictures, their own, documents, their own everything, how do you sue somebody? You can't win with that, because I'm proving that this is from them.
Right.
The next great thing, I think, will be, artificial intelligence. The next thing they'll be saying, oh, that's not us, that's created by, AI or whatever, which I think is a very dangerous thing to go down. But,
right.
That's where we're at, but.
Yeah. Now, your website is dailyrollcall.com, and there's your book, Muslim Brotherhood in Our Backyard. It's a good book. I've read it. Now, I want to say something about your website, because your website, it's not just all about the Islamic threat. It's got quite a bit of that on there. You've got issues about immigration, illegal immigration, and other things. Most of them are Tennessee specific, though not exclusively. It's a really good website. If you're out there and you've never been to the Daily Roll Call website, you need to look. There's a lot of good information, not just on the Islamist threat, but illegal immigration and other issues. And I don't know, I think you did an article not too long ago. I know it's not a weekly thing, but
yeah.
And then another website that we want to mention is Center for Study of Political Islam International. This is Bill Warner. We had him on the show a few months ago, and just notice that 51% of Islamic doctrinal texts are about politics. The goal of these politics is the submission of all people to Muhammad and Allah. Okay? It's not a, hey, would you like to join us religion. It's like, once we get enough numbers, enough power, control the levers of power, you will do what we say. So people need to wake up. We need to wake up. And I need to get in touch with Bill. I need to see if I can get one of those guys, maybe from England or somewhere, to come on here and talk about what's going on in the UK. I mean, UK and France, they're toast. They are toast.
Oh, yeah, they are. They really are. And I think people think that it's always the mentality of it's over there. Well, over there is coming in our back door and has come in the door when the border was open. But, for those that don't know Bill Warner, he is fantastic. He is a walking encyclopedia. Anybody that knows Islam, he might know more about Islam than some of the Muslims, because he is just, he's brilliant. And, he's been a wonderful mentor and friend, obviously, to us, to you too. And so his website is incredible. And his books.
Yeah, they're easy to understand. Very easy to understand.
Yeah. I kind of modeled my book after his, because he told me to make them very short and right to the point. And that's the way his are. And so you can learn so much so easily from his books. Yeah. And so, every time you have him on, I try to pay attention, because he's full of it, but it's the good full of it.
His book, Sharia Law for Non-Muslims, it's a little short book with a red cover. Excellent. I mean, it's compact, doesn't take long to read, but it lays out. If you just read that, you'll know why Islam is a threat. So, any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to hit on?
Well, I just want people to, put aside their, their thinking that, this is a great religion. It's one of the founding religions in the world, and try to understand that there's an agenda under the guise of the religion. And that's where they're brilliant. 1,400 years of saying what they're going to do and slowly, methodically doing it. And now where we're at in society right now is they are moving a little bit quicker. The goal is an Islamic caliphate, which is, just everything is, like you said, everything's under Islam. And if you read that book on Sharia law, look up Bank of America and look down and see they have halal products. Halal is everything that's permissible. Right. And so it's they're making investments. Your retirement has investment in halal products. And so they're there. And so people need to just wake up.
And whether they're successful or not, they are always attempting to do it. The Nazis weren't successful, but they were a serious problem, and a lot of people died and suffered because of them. Same thing. The Soviets, Stalin during that time, they weren't successful overall, but a lot of people suffered in the meantime. So they may or may not be successful, but they can create and have created a lot of misery. One of our earliest fights in this country, we had the fight with the Barbary pirates in the late 1700s, early 1800s, when our country was young. The Marine Corps song, From the Halls of Montezuma to the Shores of Tripoli. Well, Tripoli, that was the Barbary pirates. And Jefferson and Adams give accounts of, going to talk to hey, why are you attacking? And they were still fighting the Crusades. And they're like, well, this is what we do, essentially. Now, that's my paraphrase. This is what we do. So
it's amazing. And so, if people don't want to learn about Islam, look at the Red Green Alliance. Read anything on the Red Green Alliance, and you'll see this is what they're doing. The Democrats and the Muslims are huggy these days. So there's a lot to learn.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for being with us, for coming on. We'll definitely have you back again soon, and I'm sure you'll have some more good updates. Not necessarily good news, but good updates.
I just would love to give good news just once. I don't have any good news.
We'll work on that. We'll do a special good news show.
There we go. All right.
Hey, I want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch our program tonight. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell, so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. Speaking of support, thanks again to Jonathan Mary League's donation, made our July's programming possible. We really appreciate it. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, so please subscribe and share us with your friends. Check out our radio podcast on iHeart, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, teeninformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and X. Look for Dave's Raves, which are 2-minute audio commentaries on current events. Next Monday, our guest will be Kent Morrell, who is challenging Robert Briggs for Senate in 2026 in Tennessee District 7. Briggs certainly qualifies as a reptile. I've mentioned the reptile files on this show. If you're in his district, you don't want to miss this. And if you're a constitutionally minded conservative anywhere in Tennessee, you need to hear this. I hope you'll join us again next time. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.